Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Kari, and we are back with another live interview here. I have a few that I was conducting via Zoom that I keep forgetting to post up here, but today I'm super excited. I've got a special guest on who is known as America's Joy Magnet. So I don't know how we cannot be excited. There she is. She's joining us now. I don't know how we cannot be excited to have somebody on whose name is America's Joy Magnet. I'm super excited. Shari, let me see if I can get you invited here. A request to join. There we go. Perfect. We'll just wait for that to connect us here. I'm so excited. I can't even. Hi there. Welcome. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I heard you say, who could not be excited about America's Joy Magnet? I'm like, I am. Oh, that's me.
I've been excited all week about it. I'm just thinking, I can't believe I have somebody who's coming on who's known as America's Joy Magnet. It's amazing. It's awesome. So thank you for being here. So first, why don't you introduce yourself, though? Let us know who we're talking to.
Well, duh, America's Joy Magnet. No, it's so random because it's so silly, but it's been adopted. It's been adopted, and I'm running with it. I'm claiming it. Basically, long story short is that I help people live more joyful lives, and I do that through speaking. I do that through writing. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I also do TV hosting, things like that. At the end of the day, it's just helping people reconnect back to themselves.
Hey, it is not silly. We need more joy in our lives, I think. It's been a rough couple of years for everybody, if not a lifetime for some folks. And I love it, though. I was like, yes, America's Joy Magnet. Yeah, I come on all the time.
Well, thank you for that. You'd be shocked at how many people are a little, I would say, I don't know, annoyed might be a strong word, but when joy seems not attainable for some, there are some that don't want to look towards it, and I'm the annoying positive girl. And then there are
You know what?
So
That I hear you 100%. There's some people who are, they're kind of stuck in that negative space, and they do get annoyed by people who are happy, and they think like, go away, I don't want that. And I'm just like, okay, I'll just be happy over here. So
right. Well, thank you for being one of the happy ones to see me.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to see everybody though. I think people are amazing, and they've got such great stories. I've heard so many good stories on this little series that I'm doing here. Can't wait to hear a little bit more about yours. So this has basically been just sharing stories of people's lives and the journeys that they've been on to encourage people to pursue a life of more joy. That's the whole point is, go do something that makes you happy, live a life that makes you happy. So can you tell us though a little bit about your journey or the transformation that we're going to talk about here today, and what that looked like for you?
Sure. And I love the word little. Can you share a little about? I'm like, this is a big journey, woman. No, this is a big journey. But yes, I will. I always started around the same point because that's where I feel life shifted for me, even though I didn't have the awareness of it at a young age. But at 7 years old, I was sexually abused by a stranger. And that really was the defining moment for me in my life and where everything turned. I mean, my parents before that, they were divorced, and there was there was chaos in our homes, but I don't remember as much the earlier parts of that. I just remember from 7 years old on. And I found myself on a witness stand. I actually told on the abuser, even though, like a lot of children or a lot of survivors were told, I was threatened basically not to share, to tell. My family would get killed. I would be hurt. But there was something inside of me, and I still to this day I don't know what that was, but that said that I had to tell and that I should tell. And so I did. And really the trajectory of my life turned from that point forward. Two things I discovered that day on the witness stand was, number one, that my voice saved lives, because they found out that he had done this to other girls, and he was imprisoned. And so I was called a hero. I was called all of these strong and brave and courageous, but all of these things that I personally did not feel. I felt scared. I was hurt. I was terrified, right? But I also learned that my voice also hurt people. I took on the shame and the guilt of putting a man in prison. I took on the guilt and shame of making my family and people around me uncomfortable because it was 1981 and so nobody knew, like no one was talking about it. There wasn't a Me Too movement. There wasn't any of that.
I was going to take a moment to point that out too and say, remember, you said you were 7. And even now in the middle of Me Too, it still is a difficult thing for people to step forward and be in that position. But a 7-year-old in the 80s. So I'm very sorry that you went through that, but knowing, and I know this isn't always a helpful message, but knowing where you are today and the person you are today and knowing that's part of your journey,
I know it's a tough thing.
But
are you grateful? And that's actually part of my story that happened during the pandemic, but which I'll tell you about in gratitude and a different kind than what you would imagine. So no one was talking about it. Family didn't know how to deal with it. Luckily, I was so blessed that they believed me. And they're the ones that called the police and went through that whole process. But they did not know how to handle and talk about it afterwards. So my mom, being a mom, she just wanted to protect me. So she kept talking to me about going off with strangers and being naive and all of this, just trying to protect me. But I took that in as being blamed, that I did something wrong, that it was my fault. And then my father, who didn't want to even think about this happening to his little girl, said nothing at all. And I internalized that as he was ashamed of me. So I went through decades of really feeling the shame and the guilt and the unworthiness. But there was this part of me that was like, well, I am not going to be a victim. I am not going to allow this experience to change how I feel and how I see the world. Now that's beautiful. However, it's also not realistic to think that there's not going to be any effects. And I'm just going to keep pushing them down. And that's what I did. I just kept pushing down any emotions that would come up. And I used food as my numbing, as my medicine for me. And so I spent years basically doing that, and then being in unhealthy relationships, like just a lot of what you would traditionally, I don't know if that's a word, but traditionally see a lot of survivors, people that have experienced trauma go through.
Coping mechanisms, way to try to self-medicate, if you will, anything that's accessible, really, because these things are more accessible. There's food out there, there's, like relationships, people, and so, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah. No, I know. Not this. This doesn't seem so joyful now, does this? But I always said, man, I chose food. You can't avoid food. You have to eat. It's not like I had to go score some food. Not that any addictions are of course, are easy. But of course, it was a way for me to just keep pushing down and numbing. And then, so I had this whole thing about being positive and being happy. And that worked for years. I was like, here's 2 doors. This door to walk through feels not as good, and this one feels better, so I'm going to walk through this one, and I'm going to keep ignoring everything else. Well, you can only do that for so long, because I keep tapping at you. It's like, hello, I'm here. You got to deal with me.
And, and I just want to pause, too, for people that, even those who do, even the people who do choose happiness, and who go through life kind of in that positive spirit, that can be a difficult thing to maintain. And it can mean that we're potentially avoiding some other things, or we are just letting things build up on us. And I'm sure you're going to talk about the results of that, but I'm sure there are people out there listening to you thinking that's me. We choose to be happy, but we're not dealing necessarily or allowing ourselves to not be happy, and that it's okay for us to be in that as well. So go, oh man, okay, I am intrigued. Continue.
Funny. So you're the best audience. I'm like, okay, let's go. Start storytelling. No, so I spent years, honestly, just avoiding those feelings. And like I said, it worked. It worked for years until it didn't. Until health problems started arising because we're not, you know, our body knows, our body, you know, my nervous system is not feeling safe my entire life, and trying to control everything around me and being perfect at everything so I don't make the wrong decision, so people don't blame me. And my body can only hold that for so long. So sickness comes, anxiety comes, all of that. And it really began this journey of really sitting with my pain. And I want to say that there's nothing wrong with, like, we should be choosing positivity and choosing optimism, but there is a balance. And for me, when people hear joy, you automatically think about joy and everything is great, right? But what I've learned and what I have shared with clients and audiences and everything is that joy is the full acceptance of our truth, of who we are, of being fully in alignment with everything that we feel. And that's
so good. It's so good. It's full acceptance of it. It's not avoiding the negative. It's accepting and sitting with that and saying, this is part of my experience and I am good with that.
And that is why children are so joyful, because they have not, when we were children, we didn't learn. We hadn't yet figured out that we couldn't be who we are. We felt it all, and we felt that freedom to be it all. Yeah. And until we started getting shut down and, you know, so we have programs for like
till the world said, you know, get over there.
Yeah. And really that's the return back to ourselves. So that is a very little part of my story. And was, you know, and there's what you know a little bit about from us being at a speaking event together as speakers, you know, and the discovery of my younger self and all of that, and really just coming to terms back with who I am and the pain that I felt and the acceptance of it all.
So on, oh man, it's such a, unfortunately, it's, I think, too common of a story that we hear, this sort of thing happening in people's lives, and whether there's assault involved or not, even the conversation and the way that children can internalize and interpret things to being shame and then living life in that, you know, that's a common thing, I think, for people to experience. So now we're in this space where you've kind of decided to, you've got this life shift happening here. So we've seen where you were starting from. So what was going on at the life shift point when things started changing for you?
So like I mentioned briefly, very unhealthy relationships, mostly with myself, but really it manifested. I didn't see it as much with myself as I did with the relationships that I was having with men, really just choosing people in my life that weren't fully respecting me, that I wasn't respecting myself. So I thought I was only worthy of certain types of people. Of course, I saw that now, but in the moment when I was in that, it felt like I was stuck inside like these four walls of my own prison, of my own mind, like a wall of guilt, a wall of shame, a wall of safety, a wall, you know, all enclosed. And I didn't know that there was a window or a door to get out. I knew that there was something beyond. So like, I always knew like there was more for me, and I deserved better. Like I knew that intellectually there was this part of me. I just didn't know what that looked like or how to take those steps. And so I did I hope you don't mind, a shitload of journaling and I figured, but I don't know your audience. They'd probably be like you, wouldn't care either.
Yeah, they should be like me. If they have a problem with swear words, then they can just walk on out. But
yeah. So I just did, like, you know, I was consuming books, and I was consuming like speakers and just all of this spiritual stuff, because I was like, I would look at people in their lives and think, how come they have that and I don't? Like, I didn't realize that. I kept thinking that the world was against me, that it was, I used to actually call myself a dark cloud. I would say, I'm just the dark cloud, which is always funny to me, that the transformation from dark cloud to America's Joy Magnet is always, that's a transformation. But I remember specifically, it was oh gosh, it was 19, I'm always dating myself, but it was 1995. Nope, kidding. 1997. I had graduated from college the year before, and I was living in New York City pursuing an acting career. And I was sitting in my New York City apartment on the floor with candles all around me. I had electricity, but I was very dramatic. So I was like, well, this is what you do. You read by candlelight and you get inspired.
Amazing.
I lived a movie life. Saw way too many movies, so I thought this is what you do. Anyway, I opened up the book, Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And I wasn't specifically like religious or anything like that. It was just, I heard about this book. Anyway, this book, as I read each and every day, just like exposed me to this idea that there was more out there for me than the four walls I was living within. And so that began really just like the spiritual journey, and then the breadcrumbs. Like, so there wasn't this defining moment, but there was all of these moments where like, this didn't feel good. I don't want this. So my question was, how do I get out of this? And I just kept going step by step by step, until now we're back in the 2000s era. And I'm living in Los Angeles. I moved from New York to LA to now become a movie star, not just an actress, but a movie star.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I know. It's
I love it.
All for external validation, by the way, let me tell you, until I realized that. And then that's when I shifted careers because I wanted to be more myself than playing a character. So it was one drunken night with my male best friend, and it was after hours, and we were just like talking, and I was complaining again about the men that I was dating and the life that I was leading. And he asked me this one question that if you would ask me maybe a week before, it would have had such a big, impact. But he said, Shari, what kind of woman do you see yourself as? And I just like rattled off. I had never really thought about it, but I was like, one who respects themselves, one who's confident, one is just like on and on. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, so be her. And it could sound so simple, but I was like, I'm an actress. I can be this woman. And so what that woman did was that when I received a text from someone who wasn't very healthy in my life, I thought to myself, what would this woman do right now? And the answer was, I wouldn't text him back. And I didn't. And then it became one thing after another, till suddenly, little by little, day by day, I started just feeling a little bit better. And a little bit better. The whole like act as if, which I know so many people are against, but for some of us it works. And it didn't happen overnight, of course. Like I had setbacks and everything. But what ended up happening is that anytime something toxic came into my world, because I was starting to feel better, when it came into my life, it actually felt like poison inside of me. Like not. And so I just extracted more and more of that and input more and more good. Until we're
so good. So people listening though, I want them to hear that it's a step-by-step thing. That change, like especially big changes like this and internal mind and mental things, they're not going to just happen overnight. Sometimes they do. I'm one of those people that like light bulbs flick on in my head and I just get something, but it still is a step-by-step. It's one at a time. And I love what you said where you were like, what would this woman do in this moment? Because even just thinking about it, like from that third party point of view, can really put it into perspective for you sometimes. And I love that. I also love what you said about how once you start removing toxins from your life, whenever a new one comes in, you can recognize it better. And the effect of it. And now you're like, well, I don't like this at all. And so it's easier and it gets easier. And I love that you said that because it's so true that once you start cleansing, you really recognize that and you are not willing to let that back into your life. And so good for you. I love that. So, I love to kind of like point out things there. So continue.
It's great to hear your perspective. I'm like, oh yeah, that is me. That did happen. Because here's the thing. It's hard to recognize what it is that you want if you don't ever allow yourself to have it. And so once you take those small little steps and then like you said, or I said, one of us said, then it comes back to you, you can realize, oh, this doesn't feel good anymore. Like, I don't want to go through that doorway again. I don't go down that path. And I remember also thinking that I didn't have to wait for hindsight to learn lessons. I remember distinctly clear, like thinking that and knowing that when something showed up at my door that I could look at it and go, we already know which direction this is going to go in.
Yeah, that's good too. You don't have to learn a lesson in hindsight. You can say, nope, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah, because sometimes those red flags, like before, maybe the red flags were disguised. Now they were just like waving in your face, like, hello, you don't want to entertain me. And I used to be like, yeah, sure I do. Come on.
Yeah, true. I'm testing my resolve. I'm challenging myself, we do that.
Thing though, and that was true though, because I always knew how strong I was from what happened to me and how I could get through things, that it always seemed like, you know what, in the short term, like, I'm just going to do this. I'll be able to be fine. I'm going to do it anyway because it feels good right now. And then it was like just more suffering and more suffering till finally I was like, all right, I'm not going to choose that door.
And we don't have to prove anything either, We don't have to prove that we're big, strong women, that we can handle things. Like, it's okay for us. It doesn't make us weak to say, I'm not going to put myself through this challenge.
Yes, it actually makes us so much stronger to do it.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't really need to suffer to prove anything to myself or to others.
Such a good reminder. Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. Okay. Whew.
I don't know where we're at now. I'm just
So you were identifying things and able to now say preemptively, I don't want this in my life. So this friend of yours kind of told you to be this woman. So what happened after that?
So as I said, like, I kept making these choices, and when you live years with a certain way of believing and being, like I said, it doesn't just change overnight. It took time. But there was continual healing every day. And I still hadn't gotten to the root of the little girl that was wounded. Mm-hmm. I hadn't met her yet. I hadn't come face to face with her yet. I just knew that I wasn't feeling good, and I knew action steps to take to feel a little bit better, but there was still trauma and there were still wounds, and I was still searching and seeking, because I just always knew, like, even though I was feeling better, I still knew that there was pain there, because I was still not taking care of my body. Like, I had a very, like I said, unhealthy relationship with that. So it started with like getting healthier relationships with men. So I started improving all of the outer aspects of everything, but there were still the choices that I was making in my own life that weren't so loving and healthy. Mm-hmm. And I was living out here in LA, and I was waiting tables, that's what you do when you're trying to be an actress. And there was one particular day I was heading to work, and I was taking a shower, and I had a breakdown in my shower, like the first time that I remember. And it was in 30 years remembering that moment when I was 7, because it was always as if I was on the outside looking in, always talking about that girl and what happened to her. Well, this was the first time it happened to me. And I was like in the corner of my shower, just sobbing, like all that you would imagine a breakdown would look like. But I had to get to work. And so I got dressed somehow. Driving to work. I remember I was just sobbing so much that I could barely see the road. And I called my boss, and I just said to her, mumbled stuff about abuse and memories. And she told me to just take all the time that I needed, which was still to this day, I feel like she was like the angel in my life that day, because it gave me permission to go just take care of me and not worry about work. And I found myself in Sedona, Arizona. And for people who don't know Sedona, I didn't really know Sedona. I just heard through all my years of like reading and following all these spiritual people that it was very spiritual. And so I got home that day, and I opened my computer to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to go, because I always had to go somewhere. And there was a pop-up for Sedona. And so long story short, I ended up in Sedona trying to find healing. Like, I got to get this pain out of me. I didn't know how. I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know what vortexes were or anything. I just knew, just show up and something's going to happen. And so I spent a couple of days there, and like nothing really happened. I mean, I got lost on a hike, and then I rationalized to myself, because I'm always that, like, find the lesson, find the blessing. And so I was like, well, you got lost for 6 hours with like this much water, and so you're so strong. You're all these things that you thought you were. Like, I don't know. I made up some ridiculous stories. And I was heading back to LA, and I decided at the last minute to go to this vortex that I didn't want to go to because it didn't sound sexy. It was called the Airport Vortex. And there were other ones like Cathedral Rock and Bell, like all these cool names. So I was like, I'm just going to go there and I'm going to check out the view. And it was so, have you been to Sedona before?
I have not, no.
So beyond,
putting it on the to-do list right now, though.
Okay, yeah. Well, beyond the mystical, spiritual stuff that happens there, which it really does on every trip I've been. I've stopped going with expectations, by the way. But so besides that, it's so breathtakingly beautiful, like the red rocks. So I wanted to just go and take some pictures. And so I was up there, I took a photo, and I turned around to go back to my car. And I always share this when I speak, though, that I know that what I'm about to say is going to sound crazy. And if it was me before, I would have been like, okay, crazy, like about someone. But I turned around, and just leaning up against the red rocks, I saw my 7-year-old self. And I was like in my little blue camp shorts, my whole just like camp uniform. And she was sitting with her back up against the rock and arms wrapped around her knees. And she looked up at me and she literally just said, "It took you long enough."
Wow.
And like, as real as I'm here with you, like that, it was there. And so I just sat and I talked to her for what seemed like hours, just about the way that I was feeling, the fact that I felt like I was protecting her all these years, and that that's why food was such a big thing for me. Like, beyond stuffing down my feelings, it felt like I was putting a barrier between her and other people to keep her safe. And the weight did that. And so I told her that I needed to stop doing that. And so I just had this moment with her where I said my goodbyes. And I left back to LA, and on the trip back, I remember thinking that I felt lighter. The thing happened that I was hoping would happen, but I didn't. It felt like something was off for me. And this is a long story. But I did what I always do, which is, I put it away. I was like, I didn't know how to make sense of it. And so I just said, okay, well, you know what? Like, now you're going to start living your life again, and you're not going to use food, and you healed this thing, whatever this thing was. And the only person that I told at that time was my mom. She didn't even judge me. She just believed me. She always believed me. Yeah. And so then, life went on. And then a few years later, I'll make this short, I ended up in Italy. My current fiance, who was my boyfriend at the time, broke my heart, and I took off to Italy because that's what you do when your heart gets broken. And that entire summer basically was about me getting to learn to know myself, learning how to love myself, spending so much time with just me because I didn't speak the language. And I decided that I wanted to stay in this little village where like no one spoke English, and they were like 80. So they didn't really want to talk to me even if they spoke English, because I was like the weird outsider. Watched too many movies and was like, Principessa. So yeah. So anyway, one of my last days there in Italy, I found myself in a church, and I was just really taking in the moments of having spent the 3 months there, and like what I had learned about myself, and this whole journey of coming back to myself. Like, it felt like, even though there was still some, stuff that wasn't fully healed, I guess, but we never finished healing. Anyway, so I was there with my eyes closed and just doing the Shari thing, more of my dramatic moments of this is what you do in a church in Italy. And I heard a voice again that said, you weren't supposed to leave her. You were supposed to love her. And this part was really like a movie in my mind, because I had this whole entire flash of my entire life from the time I was 7 to being on that witness stand with her and leaving her that day because it was too painful to stay with her, and all the years I spent in disconnection with myself to that moment in Sedona where she showed up and I still turned her away, told her that I had to leave her, to now in this church in Italy where it was said, no, love her. And that is when the journey, the real journey and connection back to my entire self, my whole self, not just the happy part, but all of it began. And that is where we're at right now, where every single day I spend time with her. Every day I tell her I love her. Every day I give her a hug. And every day I ask her what she needs.
I love that. I mean, I love that so much because she is you.
Right.
You know, she is you. You're asking yourself the same question. You're telling yourself that you love yourself and you're asking, what do you need today? And you know, what we mentioned earlier is we think that in order for us to be happy, we have to disconnect from all of the negative things, that we're just not allowed to have those be part of our story, but they are.
They are. We're human.
We're human. And we can't just shove them aside and say, no, that's not part of me, because it is. And recognizing that, being okay with that, and then saying, hey, I love you regardless. I love you because of, because of everything that you've been through. And oh man, it's so good. Such a good.
I love how you said because of. I write about that in my book, because it's
Okay.
not in spite of, it is because of. It's all of me. And I always say to people, like, if we were only supposed to be these enlightened, awakened spiritual beings, then I believe we would have stayed in that spirit-based place. We wouldn't have come into, whether your beliefs or not, but in physical form to experience all of being human. And so for me now, the journey is really about, even in the sadness, even in the frustration, even in all of the human emotions, like not staying stuck in those, visiting them, having a cup of tea with them, but not like, pitching a tent there or, building a house with those feelings.
Yeah. It's yeah, I love that. It's so good because it is part of the human experience.
Yes.
But sitting with it and feeling it and then feeling your way through it, it does eventually come to an end, and you're able to go past to the next point. And then maybe at some point in the future it comes back. I know I have moments where like I'll be feeling hurt about something that happened a decade ago, but just staying present with it and saying, this is where I'm at and this is how I'm feeling right now. And that's part of my experience. And as you mentioned way back in the beginning, joy is about accepting the entire experience of your life.
Yeah. Gifting ourselves with acceptance. And it will come back. It always does, in a different way. There's another layer to peel. I feel like when we sit with those moments, that's where the lessons are learned. There's like another aspect of ourselves that's wanting to be revealed, another trait, another character, or whatever of ourselves that feeling. And so if we can look at it, and that's what I started to do, is like, what have you come to show me? This is the questions I ask. What have you come to teach me? How much more can I grow right now? So when those challenges arrive, it's more of like an excavation adventure. Like, they don't feel good. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm like, whoa, yeah, I'm hurting. But it's more like, I don't have to wait for hindsight. I already know there's a lesson in here. I already know that I'm going to grow through this. So just tell me what you got. Tell me what I'm here to learn.
So good. So good. So good. I love it so much. Oh, I feel like I've been on the journey there with you, and I'm like,
I need a drink.
I'm like, I need something. I got to get some chocolate or something because I got to give myself a pat on the back. I just went through a whole spiritual awakening with you. That was amazing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so thank you so much. It's so good though. So just, I guess, to wrap up your story then, with how do you feel about the way that you're living your life now compared to like prior to all of this sort of revelatory things, How would you say you feel now in your life?
So I feel much more like myself. I feel much more aligned to my truth. some days it's not easier. Some days I honestly would say to you, man, I wish it was easy like it was then, which just means being in denial and living in those years where I was just like, it was all good and I was happy. Like, it felt, because I didn't know better, it felt better. So there are those days where I'm like, I wish I didn't have to think so much or like have to learn so much. And that's totally honest. But when I really sit with it, I feel like myself every day. And in the learning to love myself, that's like where the deep gratitude comes from.
Yep.
Is where I'm at in this moment, which is
Yep.
sometimes difficult, sometimes amazing,
Mhm.
always grateful.
Yeah. And that's, intentional living, right? Being intentional about the way that you're showing up and what you're doing in your life and being truly authentic. And I know for me, I feel like I'm actually experiencing life. I'm here and I'm present and I'm experiencing it and it's not just happening to me. I'm
Right.
living my life and I love it.
You're
So
the driver. You're the driver.
you're the driver. I love it. It's so, so good. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, thank you for coming on here and sharing your story and like hopefully everybody else is out there just this, as much as I was. So, so good. Whew. But tell us now how we can support you, what we can do, to show you and show up for you and be there to support you.
Well, first, thank you so much for asking me to be here. Like when I met you, I was like, oh, love your spirit, your energy, all of it. So it was an immediate yes for me. So thank you for having me. And really, you could stay connected with me on, I'm all over social media, but if you need to find all the links, it's always on my website, sharielise.com. I just had a TEDx talk that came out. I would love for people to check it out.
Congratulations on that.
Sorry.
Congratulations
Oh,
on that. That's amazing. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And I actually have an upcoming one in April at my alma mater, Syracuse University. So I'll be heading out that way to do that. So that's really it. Like, just stay connected with me. I mean, if your desire is to feel more joy in your life, then allow me to help connect you back to yourself.
Awesome.
Check out my
Awesome.
book. Oh, and check out my book. Duh. Love Yourself Happy. How could we forget that? The Journey Through Italy, The Journey Back to Myself, and that's available on Amazon. Okay, now I'm done.
All right. Awesome. So go follow her, watch the TED Talk on YouTube, get the book. Thank you again so much for being here. This is amazing. Final thing, I just want to make sure I have your permission to post this video on Instagram or perhaps on my own website or up on YouTube because I want people to be able to see it and see your story. So
Absolutely, you do. Would love it.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Oh, gosh, so good talking to you again, Shari.
Same here.
All right, bye.